The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. First Book. The Disappeared of Taffy Del Vale. Chapter 2. That unpleasant incident perturbed the impeccable march of the hospital, submerging us in an indescribable state of discomfort and anguish. Specially affected was our director, the eminent Dr. Kerds, who feared that the scandal could reach to smirch the name of the illustrious local excellence that the hospital had, fact that, according to his clear logic, would influence in the checks that the powerful family of the deceased gave monthly. I will not fatigue the reader with details, because this case was very commented by the news, and if it is desired can consult the newspaper El Heraldo, from Salta, in the editions of the week from the 7 to the 15 days of January 1980, where we'll find all the information. I will only remember here the essential, due to the development of this critical case, requires to consider the strange circumstances in which the crime occurred and the mystery that surrounded it. And that still persist, because the police didn't achieve to clarify it, and dignified functionaries manifest doubts about if that will be possible one day. Because two elements such absurd as irrational intervene in a definitive way in a fatal denouement, impeding any possibility to realize coherent conjectures. The first is a verified unobjectionable fact: the crime was committed in a cell for psychotic patients, hermetically closed by a heavy steel door, between the 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. of January 6th, without anyone, absolutely anyone, would have entered during that lapse. This was proved, happily, due to a fortuitous incident. In the last night before January 5th, that is to say, day of celebration of the Three Wise Men, part of the staff went to distribute gifts to the Children's Hospital and the orphanage San Francisco de Asis. Within them was our distinguished Dr. Kerds, who at 11 p.m., was already back, still wearing the Santa Claus costume and disposed to effectuate the daily journey that, since countless years, he realizes through all the pavilions to pick up the final reports. Hence, the own Dr. Kerds saw for last time BELICENA VILLCA alive at 11:50 p.m., when due to a historical crisis on its second phase, she promoted a general disorder in the B pavilion, running desperately in the reduced space of the cell, with fixed and exorbitant eyes, while she was screaming "Peke shoot Kiri, Peke shoot Kiri," words which in that moment were incomprehensible for me, even if we recognized that it was about the Quechua language. Otherwise, the attack was symptomatically abnormal in her. Dr. Kerds ordered an immediate dose of Valium, submerging the unfortunate BELICENA VILLCA in a stupor from which she would only get out for a moment to see the death closer. Just as suggested the tremendously horrifying expression which was twitched on her countenance when she was found, already dead, 3 hours later. Here appears the mystery. The first element that disconcerted and surprised the experimented cops after that the patient was attended, at 12 a.m., all of us moved aside from the cell, being this closed by Dr. Kerds, who inadvertently saved the key in one of his customs of Santa Claus, forgetting later to deposit it on the general keychain. At 3 in the morning, when the nurse in turn makes the habitual round, she noticed the missing of the key, what no one knew how to explain. She deduced from this that the key was taken by Dr. Kerds, and, as the duplicates are in his office, she had no other alternative than to call him to his house. It was not necessary, because the operator of the internal commutator informed that the doctor was still in the hospital, although he was just to leave. Being him warned of this mistake, he decided to go up to the B pavilion to give the key and realize a brief ocular inspection. It means that during those 3 hours, the key, unique medium to open the blinded door of the cell, was in power of Dr. Kerds. But the director of the hospital was a man of a recognized social trajectory, whose moral virtues had always been exalted as an example worthy of emulation, and from whom, at last, no one would dare to doubt, neither the experimented policeman my damne in charge of the investigation. Finally, Dr. Kerds opened the door of the cell, accompanied by me and the nurse Garcia, exactly at 3:05 a.m. A penetrating and sweet smell was the first that caught our attention. Was a fragrance like sandal incense, which was such out of place that we looked each other, perplexed. but just for a moment, because what came next concentrated all our attention. BELICENA VILLCA lying on her bed, undoubtedly dead since some time ago, with her neck swollen due to the strangulation that she was submitted. The homicidal arm, a rope ivory-colored, was still in last on her head, but already released. And the two extremes falling gently over her chest up to the corners of the bed. Was such horrible spectacle, that the experimented nurse Garcia exclaimed a terror scream and she staggered back, needing to hold her by the shoulders, although my legs were not strong at all. And it was not for less. The dead had her hands closed over the blankets on both sides of the body, position where they had to be at the moment of the death and that the cadaveric rigidity conserved. What indicated that she didn't defend herself against the mysterious murderer. He infused such terror that, even looking how he passed the rope around her neck, and then, feeling it closing and cutting her breathing, she only desperately clung to the blankets. Such deduction was confirmed by the contemplation of the gesture on her visage, big and exorbitant eyes, a half-closed mouth, allowing to see the swollen tongue, which seemed to be broken on an unfinished word, something that may well be never pronounced again, perchance the mysterious peke. I will expose now the second absurd and irrational element which, as it intervened with the weight of the concrete, removed any hope to obtain a soon and simple solution. I will explain it better. The incomprehensible fact that the door was locked at the moment of the crime, first element, could be disregarded, establishing the logic hypothesis, even if they were improbable, that the killer had another key, or the existence of a conspiracy of the medical staff, etc. After all, such hypothesis was formulated by the police, and what they pretended was to despoil the case from any mystery or supernatural illusion. But the ivory-colored rope, second element, was a too tangible object to be ignored. The second element was the evidence that something sinister and irrational had been irresistibly installed among us. It was about a rope of 1 meter long, made of hair, apparently human, braided and dyed. But the exceptional was represented by the 2 gold medals, one on each side, turning madly in the 2 small combs of gold. The medals by themselves constituted the most absurd of the set, exactly equal in their form to a Star of David, but were not, however, their engravings and inscriptions. One of them had chiseled a 4-leaf clover wrought in the central hexagon. The other showed a fruit which, undoubtedly, corresponded to a pomegranate. I found them similar to some Masonic jewels that I saw in an exposition of the Rotary Club. But the familiarity ended when I remembered and reasoned that the only point of resemblance between these and them was the Star of David that, as everybody knows, is formed by 2 intertwined equilateral triangles. This is a symbol adopted since millenniums ago by the Hebrew people to identify themselves, as can be verified today seeing it in the flag of the State of Israel. The subsequent parts of the medals had inscriptions. But these, farther to clarify something, increased our confusion, because they were written in 2 different languages. One phrase, horizontally engraved in the center, was written in Hebrew characters, even though those signs were not the same on each medal. Surrounding these words was another inscription in Latin letters, this time identical for both jewels. In that moment no one could clarify to what language they belonged. Ada, As, Sid, Tre, Mac, HWCH. The Hebrew words on their part said, in the pomegranate, and in the clover. As will be understood, this curious bejeweled rope gave all the sensation to be something of ceremonial or religious use, attribute that Officer Maidane noticed immediately, because at the first moment when he examined, he couldn't avoid an expression of repugnance and an exclamation. Puyul. This is something Jew.